in 1982, he argued that the commitment technology may be imperfect. And as a result, if the commitment probability, if the successful commitment is low probability, then excessive demands can arise in equilibrium. And it provides a benefit to the negotiator when only her attempt is successful, but the other side's attempt is not successful. Now, in Crawford, there's a single round of concession, but the logic changes if you introduce multiple rounds, and that bring in reputation building, as in Kambe's paper. And in that case, players can learn over time whether the other side is committed or not, and there could be delays in reaching agreement. And Kambe shows that actually the logic of Crawford would break down in that case. That because of the potential delays adding additional cost, then in equilibrium, demands would be compatible at the beginning, and you wouldn't actually even go to this reputation race that would follow if the demands were incompatible. At the same time, in real life, we still observe these incompatible demands. So, if you allow reputation building as well, how can we explain the possibility of incompatible demands? So that's exactly the question our paper addresses. Okay, so we are going to consider a stylized model of bargaining with imperfect commitment and reputation building. And we introduced two new features to this. First, the success of the commitment attempts may be correlated. So, for example, if public sentiments favors one side, then it doesn't favor the other side. And so there could be a correlation in whether the commitment attempts have been successful or not. This would be, for example, the case in the political promise example I just mentioned earlier. The other new feature is the possibility of public signals about the resolve of each negotiator that could come through, for example, opinion polls, media coverage, visible public strikes, as in happening in Europe, public labor negotiations. So these signals shape the beliefs of the players about how resolved the other side is. So together, these two factors can actually explain the possibility of incompatible demands. And we allow the correlation to be negative, positive, or no correlation at all in the commitment attempts. So negative correlation, in fact, I'm glad Deepal is here. So there's a recent, very nice paper in AR by Basak and Deb. It's a complete information framework, but it provides a micro foundation also for this negative correlation, where two political parties take stand on an uncertain public support. And if the public supports one side, then that side, it's very hard for that side to back down, but other side can back down easier. So it's kind of like a negative correlation. But you could also have a positive correlation. It could be that negotiation is over a polarized issue, and each party is really talking to their base, and the salience of the issue is uncertain. But if it's become important, it becomes for both sides as well. So it's going to be difficult for both parties to back down from their positions. And it could be also there's no correlation. This was the case considered by Kambe in his paper, the totally independent resolution of the two parties. It could be as in international negotiations, the parties are subject to totally different domestic pressures, and there's no correlation on whether their commitment attempts are successful or not. So those are the examples of different correlation scenarios, and we allow for all of them. And I mentioned, the sources of public signal. So the two new things we introduced, otherwise standard reputational bargaining game with endogenous demands, is having a correlation in the commitment attempts, and also potential public information arriving after the demands are made. All right, so related literature. So our paper contributes to two strands of bargaining literature. On the one side, there are commitment tactics with complete information, starting with Schelling, both sides, actually, both of the literatures. An important contribution was Crawford, as I mentioned. This literature is surveyed in Mietinen 2022 in a volume on recent developments in bargaining. And the other literature, reputational bargaining, is surveyed by Fanning and Wolensky in the same surveys. I highly recommend those two survey papers. I think of so one side of the literature we contribute is the commitment tactics with complete information, but ours is going to be incomplete information and reputational bargaining. So there, the seminal paper is Abreu and Gül, where the demands are exogenous and Cambe endogenizes those demands. Of particular relevance, I think, given that Deepal and Jack are in here, let me highlight, we also highlighted in the paper, Basak and Deb is a recent paper that features incompatible demands in a complete information world with negative correlation with it's complete information. And Fanning 2018 has reputational bargaining, and it also has incompatible demands. And there, the cost, there's a future time at which the cost of delay might change. So we introduce different sources, and in particular, compared to clearly it's very different from Jack's explanation. Ours is complementary, but compared to Basak and Deb, we highlight that either the correlation or the public signals themselves are sufficient to explain incompatible demands. All right, so let me turn into the model. There are two players who are bargaining over the division of a unit surplus. The game starts by the players making simultaneous demands. Player I demands alpha I. This is bounded above by D. We allow D to be sufficiently large, but it is below 1 for technical reasons. If the demands are incompatible, then it's over. There's nothing to, the game ends. They each receive their demands. And if there's excess surplus left, they can share it in any way. It doesn't really matter. It could be shared equally. But if the demands are incompatible, now we move into the bargaining stage. And the bargaining stage is alternating offers until some offer is accepted. Time between two offers is delta T, and the players discount the future at a rate Ri, and the discount rate is delta I. That's, of course, related to the discount rate in the obvious way. This bargaining stage, before the bargaining stage starts, players learn if they are committed or not. Privately, this information is revealed to them. A committed type always demands insist on what they demanded originally. And whenever it's their turn to propose, they will keep on proposing the same thing. They want to get what they demanded. And when the other side is proposing, they wouldn't accept anything less than that. So they are committed to this. A flexible type can make any demand and can accept any offer. So this is, interesting thing is really coming from the behavior of the flexible types, their strategies. The joint distribution of types is P theta. So theta is theta 1, theta 2 vector. And the marginal probability of commitment success is pi I. Now, after the commitment types are realized, both players observe public signals about the success of the commitment attempts. These are binary signals and conditional on the types. They have precision tau I.
Yeah.
And yes.
One clarification. So commitment attempt is not something chosen by the player, no?
No. Yeah, it's not something
and
they make a demand and then they try to commit to this, but sometimes it is successful, sometimes not.
but they don't
Right?
have the option of not trying to commit. I don't know if that's
Oh,
with a loss of generality.
right. Yeah, so I suppose by making a very small demand, it's as if not committing at all, right? Would that be, Kirill?
So I don't think this is without laws. So this is not without laws, but as Hulya said, so there's no separate decision whether to try commitment. But so if the demands happen to be compatible, essentially this ends the game, right? And if they're incompatible, it's as if we're trying to commit to our demands.
I mean, my concern is that basically the amount at which you commit is exactly the same as the amount that you demand. Okay, and that what basically means that perhaps there is role for taking a decision of whether you want to carry on with that commitment strategy or action.
So the demand is alpha I, right? And if you happen to, so it's as if you're making these speeches as a political party, for example, we are going to make this much tax cuts and so on. You may not make those speeches at all, which is not allowed in the model. They have to make those speeches. And then if the public supports you, it's going to be hard to back down. And then I guess we don't have the possibility of not committing in the first place. All right, so let me.
Sorry, can I ask a slightly different question? The other thing is that the commitment. So you could think of a model where, I think it's related to what Angela said, that the commitment type is learned before you made a demand.
Right.
Right. And so I suppose this is related to what you just said to the discussion with Angel, which is that would make it more complicated.
Well, that's a different type of question you're asking, actually. I think if you learn your commitment type beforehand, now it becomes a signaling game and it becomes very complicated.
Right.
So, so in the related literature, I mentioned Anna, I cannot pronounce her last name. So her paper,
yes.
So she looks at, but it's not so she looks at the possibility of learning your type before, but it's a slightly different game.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it will introduce signaling basically. And Kambe, more relevant paper writing in reputational bargaining is Kambe. For the most part, his paper is where you learn your commitment type after you make the demands, but down the road, he has some subsection on the other version that you are asking. And then, of course, it becomes a signaling game, and there's a gazillion of equilibria, so you need to do an equilibrium refinement and so on. And he shows that his results go through when you restrict attention to some equilibrium refinement. We haven't done that. I imagine something similar will go through, but let me, it's a different game, basically. Okay. All right. So so those are interesting questions. Thanks so much. Where we read, so the model, I did describe this slide. Okay. So, and we talked about this as well, the starting reputation. Oh, actually, no. We talked about the signals, but we didn't talk about the starting reputations, which will play an important role. So the starting reputation of player I, so I will keep on referring to that thing. This is at the beginning of the reputation race, after the types are learned and the signals are realized. From the perspective of a flexible opponent, what is the probability that this player is committed? So what is the probability that player I is committed when player J is not, after receiving the signals? That's called the starting reputation, and that will play an important role in our characterization. Okay. So these signals are public, and because of that, the starting reputations are common knowledge. And so we can directly apply Abreu and Gül's analysis to this bargaining stage. They show that as the time between the offers go to 0, the equilibrium outcome in the alternating offers game converge to the unique equilibrium in a reputation continuous time concession game. Actually, it doesn't even have to be alternating offer. They show that the result holds more generally with other bargaining protocols as well.
Sorry, Hulya, just take one slide back. I just wanted to point out one thing. So that you are introducing the correlations as well as, sorry, I was muted, so it took some time.
Oh, okay.
So this last line is that it's also conditioned on theta j is equal to 0. So that's the correlation part, essentially, that the signal about the other person is not the only thing that is telling me this starting reputation. Okay.
Right. And down the road, I'm going to shut down either the signals or the correlation. So I'm going to allow both possibilities.
Okay.
So those are
just wanted
allowed.
to end up point that.
Yeah. All right. Good. Thanks. All right. So the unique equilibrium of this concession game, basically, what happens in that? This is Abreu and Gül result. What happens there? This is, once we learn once we have the starting reputations, right? This is after we are in the incompatible demands subgame, and then we learn the types and the signals are realized. Then Abreu-Gül characterization result can be directly applied. What happens there is committed types, of course, never concede by construction, but flexible types can concede any time. What do they do in the unique equilibrium? What happens depends on the initial demands, the discount rates, and the starting reputations. Okay, so in particular, so the strategy of player I is it consists of two things. One is her demand, and the other is her concession strategy. So the demand is given by a number in 0D. The starting reputation, now it's a mixture of it is basically the distribution over the earliest concession time of player I, and it's a mixture. With some probability player I is committed, and with some probability, in which case they never concede. So it's just fixed at, they never concede. That is FIT theta I equals 1. It's just all the weight is never conceding at all. And then with some probability, they are flexible, and that is the concession strategy of the flexible type. Okay, and equilibrium concept is perfect Bayes in equilibrium. So the beliefs about each other player is updated according to Bayes' rule. The longer the other side holds on and not concedes, the more likely that he might be the committed types. I'm going to be updating my beliefs about the other side. Okay, so let's understand that unique equilibrium characterized by Abreu and Gül. So they show that unique equilibrium is given by a concession rate and lambda I, and Ti is the potential exhaustion time. So what does it mean? So lambda I, that's the concession rate of player I during the reputation race that would keep the other player indifferent between conceding now and conceding later. So from the perspective of player J, if she concedes today, she's just going to get whatever's left over after player I's demand is satisfied. That's 1 minus alpha I. If she concedes a bit later, with some probability, player I will concede, right? That's going to happen with lambda I times delta T. And player J will get delta J. With the remaining probability, player J is now conceding delta T periods later. So by conceding delta T periods later, she gets 1 minus alpha I, but then it's discounted because that's later. So if we equate these, and then solve for lambda I, we obtain this, of course, as we let delta T to go to 0, and we need to use L'Hopital's rule. So this is the concession rate of player I, okay? So this comes from Abreu and Gül paper, but I'm giving you the logic behind Abreu and Gül result. What is TI? TI is the potential exhaustion time of player I. What does that mean? That is the time at which player I's reputation reaches 1. So when we reach TI, we conclude that, oh, this guy is for sure the committed type, okay? So why is this? It is this expression. Now, if player I concedes at a constant rate and her strategy is atomless, then the distribution can be written as this expression, all right? And by definition, we are doing Bayesian updating, and by definition, TI is the time at which our belief about player I being committed reaches 1. So we set the belief equal to 1 and solve for the TI, and we would obtain this expression. So TI is the time at which we will conclude that player I must be committed for sure. Okay, so these are the two expressions that characterize Abreu and Gül result. There's one more thing from Abreu and Gül, and that is the reputations must be exhausted at the same time. But what happens if we have, after solving, we get TI less than TJ? Well, then player I wins the reputation race because we conclude sooner that player I is the crazy type. So player J, if he's flexible, he has to concede now. But Abreu and Gül show that the reputations must be exhausted at the same time. How is that going to happen? To achieve this, at time 0, player J must be conceding with a positive probability. So we obtain it by making sure that the reputations reach to 1 at the same time, or the game ends at the same time, basically. So the reputation of player I, here TI was less than TJ, so player I wins the reputation race. For player J, this would be believed. By setting them equal, we can solve for the probability with which player J must concede at time 0. Okay, and if it could happen that T1 equals T2, in this case, players tie in the reputation race, and nobody concedes with probability 0 at the same time. They move on to the concession right away. Otherwise, player I concedes at rate lambda I and doesn't have an atom, but player J concedes with a positive probability at time 0, and then if he didn't concede, then he concedes at rate lambda J. Okay, so this is the Abreu and Gül. Now, graphically, what happens is the line T1 equals T2 defines a line segment. So that tells us basically what's going to happen in the reputation race if we move into in the concession game. So remember, the demands has to live in this rectangle. So in the x-axis we have player 1's demand, in the y-axis we have player 2's demand, right? The demands must lie in this interval. Now, given the initial, demands, I should mention that we have been suppressing this T1 equals T2 in, one sec, I lost you guys. What did I do? All right, so buried in these expressions of lambda I, there are the initial demands. And then Ti depends on lambda I. So the Ti itself depends on the initial demands. It also depends on the discount rates and the starting reputations. Okay. So the T1 equals T2 line depends on the initial demands as well as these. So the slope of this line is given by this expression, and it could be that this line is so that the entire feasible demand area is where player 1 would lose reputation race no matter what. Even when player 2 demanded the whole thing, it's always going to be the case that T1 is going to be bigger than T2. Okay. Or it could be that no matter what, player would win the reputation race, no matter what they demand, when player 2 is demanding the whole thing. Or it could be that, anything is possible. So then your demand could affect whether you win or lose. For intermediate values of that ratio, we could be in any of those scenarios. Okay. Now let's look at the expected payoffs. So to define the expected payoffs, remember the game ends at the earliest of T1 and T2. So once the reputation of the first one, one of the players is exhausted, the other one is going to just concede. There's no reason, once you know the other side is crazy, there is no reason to hang out further. So T0 is the time at which the game is going to end. It's the minimum of T1 and T2. The reputation, so rho Cj is the probability that player J is committed, given that player I is also committed. So again, the correlation kicks in here, but it also depends on the signals. And Qj is if player J is the one who is who's losing the reputation race, and at time 0 making a concession, Qj is the probability that player J makes the concession. So this looks complicated, but it's really not so. So let's break it down to pieces. So the first part, this is the case when player I is flexible. If player I is flexible, the expected payoff is just 1 minus alpha j. Okay, so why is that? Well, player I is indifferent between concession, concession at any time between 0 and T0, and receives this payoff. Basically, both players are conceding at some positive rate. Some of the time, player I is conceding her demand, but the cost of delay and the other player's concession rate precisely offset each other. And there's player I's payoff in the end doesn't depend on her own demand. They just offset each other, and player I is getting 1 minus alpha j, whatever is left after the other player is satisfied. Okay, so that's when player I is flexible. What happens when player I is committed? So in the first line, this is the loser's payoff. So if you are the loser, T0 must be so if we are looking at player I, T0 is equal to Tj, because we end when other player's reputation has reached 1, right? So player I is committed with some probability. If the other player is also flexible, then you obtain your demand for sure. You are committed, and other player is going to concede. So player I receives alpha I, but that will come after a costly delay. And after taking into the delay, the payoff, expected payoffs, comes down to this expression, which is greater than 1 minus alpha j. So this basically shows that if you are committed and the other side is flexible, there's actually a benefit of making an incompatible demand, right? If you make a compatible demand when the other side is demanding alpha j, you would get 1 minus alpha j right away. But if you make an incompatible demand, you will get an even larger expected payoff. So that's basically capturing the ideas emphasized by Schelling and Crawford, that when you are committed and the other side is flexible, that helps you. So how is that your higher demand help? In this case, when you are committed and you are the loser, right? We are looking at the case when you are the loser, T0 is equal to Tj, and that increases, then Tj increases with a higher demand, so you have an incentive to make a higher demand. Okay, so that was the second term. But this is when when you're committed and the other side is flexible, but it could be that the other side is committed as well. So there is this extra discounting we need to apply. 1 minus rho Cj basically attenuates the benefits of successful commitment by that factor, because it could be that the other side is also committed, in which case there's going to be an impasse, and by making an incompatible demand, you increase the chances that we will not reach an agreement at all, right? So that's the first line is, yeah.
Hulya, just a quick question there. So if I'm understanding this notations right, so PJC and PJF will be exactly the same if there is no correlation, right?
Rho Cj and rho Fj
are the same if there is no correlation.
If there is no correlation, so if I'm so rho Jf is the probability from the perspective of a flexible opponent that the other side is committed, right? So then, if there's no correlation, if it is independent, it won't depend on whether I'm committed or not.
Those two will just cancel out in
those
that
two
case.
Will be, those two will cancel out in that case. I mean, still,
Okay.
they will just, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll come back and talk about those special cases.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just writing the most general case. By the way, and thanks for asking this, that reminds me, when I'm writing these expressions, going back, I guess, buried in my notation, there's S, right? These payoffs depend on S. And where is S? Well, S affects, I'm suppressing them, but S affects these as well, right? All right, so, and then, so we talked about, okay, so the winner gets an additional benefit. So winner has the same things. In addition to that, gets a benefit. But let me mention that for the winner, this T0 is going to be equal to Ti, right? So the winner is the one, with the one minimum T1, T2. So if player I is the winner, this T0 is going to be Ti. But the main benefit of being the winner is forcing the opponent to concede at time 0. So that's basically the probability of concession of the opponent that increases with Tj minus T0. When you increase your demand, it's not clear what's going to happen. On the one hand, if the opponent concedes, you will get a higher amount. But at the same time, it decreases Tj minus T0. So it decreases the time. So it's basically the probability of concession is going to decrease, and it's not clear what's going to happen to the winner by increasing their demand. Conditional on winning is better, but it's going to decrease on probability of concession at the conditional on having a concession is better, but probability of concession goes down at time 0. Okay. Anyhow, so as I just mentioned, after Deepal's question, all these depend on the signals. So once the signals are realized, we are in this reputational race, and these were the payoffs coming from there. But really, before they make demands, they don't know what signals there will be, what starting reputations there will be. So the overall ex-ante expected payoff from making, demands alpha 1, alpha 2 is given by the expectation over the all possible signal realizations of these expected payoffs. And the winner and the duration will depend on the signals and the precisions. Okay. So with that, we can actually already get Cambe and Crawford as special cases. So the Cambe paper, remember, it was reputational race game with independent types. So to get the independent types of Cambe, we have the joint probability is just pi 1 times pi 2. Pi I is the probability that I is committed. And there are no signals, so completely uninformative signals. This goes back to actually Deepal's question. So we're just going to have rho IF and rho IC equals to pi I. Doesn't matter if you are committed or flexible. The probability you assign to the other side being committed is pi I. The loser's payoff from what we have written, after making the substitutions, we get an expression that is below 1 minus alpha j. In other words, if you were to just make a compatible demand, you would get 1 minus alpha j. If you move into reputation race, you get 1 minus alpha j discounted by an amount, and that is, there's no incentive to make an incompatible demand. So that's Cambe result. But Crawford had incompatible demands in equilibrium. How does that happen? Well, there, we set the signals to be completely informative. There's really no reputation building game. We don't have these delays and so on. If you know you are flexible, you are going to concede immediately when facing a committed opponent. You will know right away, whether you are committed or not, whether the other side is committed or not. We are not going to waste time trying to figure out anything, and the flexible type concedes immediately. If both turn out to be flexible, they play a complete information war of attrition. So this was analyzed in Hendricks, Weiss, Wilson, but they show basically there's a lower bound when they are both flexible. That the worst case you would get when the other side is demanding D. Worst case you get 1 minus D. If only I is committed and J is flexible, then you get your demand. And it could be that only J is committed and I is flexible. Then you get what is left over after conceding to player J. And then if both are committed, you just get 0. No, there's not going to be any agreement, right? So this exceeds 1 minus D when the probability of commitment is sufficiently small, I think. I cannot see the bottom of my slice. Something is covering them. Yeah, so when pi j is less than, when the other side is committed with sufficiently small probability. Okay, so that's the Crawford result. Now, oops, what's happening? I lost the way to get to my. Right. I wish I could minimize this thing, the audio, and do you guys see what I'm seeing on the screen? No. There are these buttons from Zoom that are, all right, so. All right, so let's now get to, let's shut down the signals now and just look at the correlation case, okay? So we have the following joint distribution of types. So remember, rho was the probability that you are committed from the perspective of a flexible opponent. So the probability that both players are flexible is 1 minus rho times 1 minus pi. Probably that player 1 is flexible and player 2 is committed is rho 1 minus pi, and so on. So this is a symmetric table. For simplicity, we assume that the probability of being committed is identical for both of the players, then there are no signals. And rho is the starting repetition of each player. For this to be a valid distribution, we must have this entry to be non-negative and less than 1, right? So that requires rho is bounded between 0 and 1, a minimum of 1 and pi or 1 minus pi. Now we have at special cases, if rho is equal to pi, this is really independent case, right? So it's 1 minus pi squared. Both are flexible, pi 1 minus pi, one is committed, the other is not, and so on. So that's the independent case. If rho is less than pi, then so rho is not the usual correlation coefficient. I want to highlight that. Rho is the starting repetition. So if rho is less than pi, then the commitment attempts are positively correlated. And at the extreme, you can think of what happens if rho is equal to 0, right? We are going to have 1 minus pi in here and pi in here. These two will be 0. So either we are both flexible or we are both committed. And then rho is bigger than pi, then the success of commitment attempts are negatively correlated. So again, you can look at the extreme. If rho is equal to 1, this entry will be 0. So there is no probability that we are both flexible. But if I'm flexible, I know you're committed. And if I'm committed, you're flexible. It could be that we are both committed, but there's no chance that we are both flexible. So it's kind of like it's not really perfect negative correlation, but it's a negative correlation in that case. Okay. Now, going back to the earlier expected payoffs I have derived for the special case when the commitment, there are no signals, right? And there's potential correlation. We can substitute and write the expected payoff of the player when she wins and she loses as these expressions. And then we construct an equilibrium in which both players demand D. And by the way, I have like 14 minutes. Do I? Is that so? Okay. So notice that, I guess it's not that easy to notice here, but it's straightforward algebra to verify that the loser's payoff is increasing in her own demand. So if you're going to lose, you might as well demand more. And then we show that when the opponent is making the highest possible demand, winner's payoff is also increasing in their own demand under some conditions. So one condition is when rho is sufficiently high. And so that's, these are, there are some derivations in the slides as well, I think. But I won't go into the details of those. But it's some algebra basically. But intuitively, when rho is close to 1, the probability of the other side conceding at time 0 is relatively insensitive to the demand. Remember, there was a ambiguous effect of increasing payoff for the winner. On the one hand, you get more when the other side concedes. On the other hand, the probability that the other side concedes at time 0 was going down. But when rho is close to 1, that probability is relatively insensitive to the demand. So the first effect dominates. And when basically, we also need to make sure that it is better to move into the repetition race as opposed to making compatible demands. So you also need to make sure the loser's payoff is higher than what they would get if they were to make a compatible demand, in which case they would get 1 minus D. So that gives us another condition. And this again holds if the upper bound on the demand is sufficiently high, or if the probability of probability of being committed is sufficiently low, and the correlation is sufficiently negative, this condition will be satisfied. So putting them together, so this rho star D is the smallest rho for which all of these inequalities hold. Those inequalities basically both require sufficiently high rho, both of them. Once we have that, if D is bigger than pi and rho is sufficiently high, then there's an equilibrium in which incompatible demands arise, basically, and both players demand the highest possible amount. So intuitively, when rho is high, when you are flexible, you are pretty sure that the other side is committed, and you concede pretty early. We don't waste much time in trying to build reputation and so on.
Yeah, just one small thing, but we can talk about later if you are running out of time. So the D greater than pi, I forgot where that was coming from.
D bigger than pi?
Yeah.
That comes from so to get the loser's payoff. The loser must still be willing to take the risk instead of making a compatible demand. Right. And that's actually a mild condition because for technical reasons we restricted D to be
could be
less than 1, but it can be arbitrarily close to 1. Okay. And in fact, it's in the slides, the ex-ante probability of impasse can be arbitrarily high for there to be an equilibrium in which both players make incompatible demands. Okay. So as D goes to 1, what you get from incompatible demand is also going to 0. All right, so that's the first main result. Basically, with forget about the public signals, but allow correlation as long as the correlation is sufficiently negative. Right, the first condition is pretty mild, D bigger than pi. The upper bound on the demands is not is high enough, or the probability of being committed is low enough. As long as there's sufficiently negative correlation, there's an equilibrium in which both players demand D. The next result is about, now we are going to allow any correlation. It could be positive, negative, any correlation, but we are going to allow signals, sufficiently informative signals. The distribution of types is still given by the same table. We didn't change anything about that, so we allow any correlation. The precision of the signals, let's assume for simplicity the precision is the same, so conditional on getting SI equals tau I, probably that the other player is type, conditional on the other player being type theta I, the probability that I get signal equal to that is given by tau. And what we show is that if the signals are sufficiently informative, so as tau goes to 1, both players, also as pi is sufficiently low, both players make incompatible high demands. So in the rest, so in the paper or in the model, when they are making the demands, they don't know their types yet. Like Francesco was asking about that. So they don't know their types yet, and they don't know this. They don't have the signals as a result. But to show that this happens, suppose for a second that they did know the signals. So we are going to show that D is the best incompatible demand for any realization of the signals, and then ex ante, it must be the best possible demand. So that's what we show. So consider player 1. If the signals are 1-1, the starting reputations are equal, and they converge to 1 as the precision of the signals goes to 1. So that's basically by theorem 1, or really by the proof of that, really, because we don't need the d bigger than pi part. There's an equivalent incompatible demand. So demanding d is a best response when the opponent demands d. When signals are 0-1, so probability with high enough precision, probability that player 1 is committed is 0, probability that player 2 is committed is 1. Right, so player 1 basically is going to lose the reputation rate and race and concede to player 2. And because we showed that the loser's payoff is increasing in her demand, so demanding D is still a best response for player 1 when player 2 is demanding D. Third possibility is, signals are 1-0. This is when player 1 appears to be committed and player 2 appears to be flexible, in which case player 1 is going to win the reputation race. And finally, it could be that the signals are 0-0. Then, both players appear to be flexible, and to win the reputation race, player 1 would moderate her demand. And we show that as the precision of the signals goes to 1, the winner's payoff is increasing in her demand. This is similar to what I showed earlier. So as as rho 2f is close to, when rho 2f is close to 0, the probability that player 2 concedes at time 0 is relatively insensitive to the demand of player 1. So the benefit of increasing the demand exceeds the cost. So in all of these cases, the demanding D is the best response to the opponent demanding D, even though you don't know your type at the beginning, you don't know the signals yet, but because in all of these cases, demanding this best response. So the mid payoffs basically conditional on S. I guess there's one possibility that there's going to be the payoffs are going to go to 0 when you are both committed, then you are going to get 0. But in other cases, the payoff will either, in one case, player 1 concedes quickly and she gets just 1 minus D. In this case, player 1 is committed, player 2 is flexible, player 2 will get her demand D, and in the final case, it's going to be 1 minus or D, but the loser will concede quickly. So overall, putting them together, the lower bound on the limit of player 1 is going to exceed the payoff from making a compatible demand when pi is sufficiently small. The probability of commitment is sufficiently small. Okay, so when for any correlation coefficient, so rho can be anything. If pi is sufficiently small, when the signals are sufficiently precise, there again is an equilibrium in which both players demand D. Basically, with public signals, intuitively, with public signals, the reputation race is resolved almost instantaneously. So there is not much cost of delay and impasse and so on. So overall, I guess putting the two main results together, either when correlation is sufficiently negative or there are public signals, reputation race is resolved pretty quickly and the probability of delay goes to 0. And in that case, making incompatible demands become an equilibrium. Okay, so to summarize, I think I'm good on time. In practice, we observe excessive demands, right? And these are inefficient and puzzling. Why do we observe them? Crawford provided a resolution of this by arguing commitment is imperfect. But Cambe showed that, well, if you add potential delays and reputation raise, this goes away. And we show that if you bring in negative correlation or public resolution of who's committed, who's not, it comes back. And in any case, so this is this will allow us to generate incompatible demands. Like I mentioned, Basak and Deb 2020 has this nice result that each player gambles on the event that the public will support them, not the other side. So this gambling on public opinion generates incompatible demands. Here we show it because it's a complementary, it's in a reputational race framework, and we show that you don't need actually negative correlation if you have the public signals. It works with any correlation, and at the same time, if you don't have the public signals, it requires negative correlation. All right. So 1 minute to go. Happy to hear questions, additional questions.
Okay. Sorry, Angela, you want to ask something?
No, I was to say impressive. I think this is the first time we have seen a speaker that basically even allows for 1 extra minute. Okay, so thank you. So yeah, I mean, so now we open the Q&A session where we have final questions and perhaps comments. No, so as it is customary, I'm gonna allow Deepal to talk first.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to say is that so this theorem 2 that you are giving, where doesn't matter about correlation if signals are sufficiently precise, we get to. So that's like a. Give me 1 second. Yeah. So that's like a. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So an equilibrium where both ultima and t. This is incompatibility. So this is like in some sense, it's a robustness of Crawford, because you can think about like tau being the information being absolutely precise is, let's say, Crawford. So you're saying even if it is pretty close, so you see what Crawford was saying is right in some sense. I can interpret. Yes.
In some sense. I mean, so in Crawford, there's no reputational race, right?
Sure.
But here, if the signals are perfectly precise, you don't have reputational race either. Yes. But if it is, if there's some imprecision, still we have as you say.
So this is one way to kind of say that, Crawford's result is robust. I'm now introducing this delay in some sense by introducing some not tau less than 1 kind of word. Okay. So I would also kind of then, like in a similar way, and I think about, okay, so there is a theorem 1, theorem 2, let's say there is a theorem 3 now, which is essentially, can I also give some sort of a robustness of Cambe and say that, hey, you see, if rho was close to pi, okay, you will not have compatibility essentially.
Right.
So a result of that form. Okay, we have it.
We have that result also, and an earlier, longer version of the paper had it as an explicit result. Right. But we want to streamline it, and we discussed it along the way.
Sorry, I lost you there.
But we do not present it as a separate theorem, but as well.
Okay.
I'm making up things.
I think that there was a little bit of instability in the connection, so we didn't hear what you answered. Oh, okay.
Do you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
You hear me now? You didn't hear
Yeah, we
any
can
of
hear
my
you now.
answer, I assume. So I'm going to just repeat. I'm saying Deepal is right. There is indeed such a result, and we have a formal proof of that result as well. But we wanted to streamline the paper, and it is not explicitly written as a theorem, but an earlier version has it as a. I mean, this is the first draft that we're circulating really, but our earlier internal draft had that as formal result, so we have that proof as well.
And I like this fact that those two, started the motivation with the yeah, okay, you can hear me. So the motivations being these two are somewhat of an opposite result. So how do I make the connection? So you're saying, hey, I can put them in the space of tau and rho, the correlations and information structure essentially. And in one extreme, it's the Crawford, and the other extreme is the Cambe. So you see, yes, what they were saying in my framework, if I kind of think about it in the space of tau and rho, those guys are the extreme cases, so they are robust in some sense. So I'm just thinking of the page, so this is, yeah, both of them are robust, but I can give you this new results as well, which is like, your theorem one, which is saying, hey, just correlation being high, and that is nowhere close to either of those things essentially, and there also I can show you why incompatibility will arise. Another thing which is
this, and also let me add that this one is also in a way robustness of your result with Joy.
I was
that
trying to think about
also,
that one, but
you could also have incomplete information and so on.
Yeah.
And still that would be you don't need the public complete information and so on. You could have incomplete information and yeah.
And one, I think this is more on the aspirational side of it, and I don't know if it is feasible at all, but it's like, so can we derive some sort of a sufficient condition that, like in your second stage, like, following any kind of incompatible demand, you have a bargaining game. But if I do not specify any specific bargaining game, I just assume something about the whatever, like, some general bargaining problem is there and some sort of a payoff I just specify in an abstract form, and still try to kind of get some sort of a sufficient condition in terms of those rho or the correlation and the information structure essentially, and say, hey, there is a sufficient condition in a very general sense that will tell you that, yeah, compatibility is a possibility. Here is a sufficient condition where incompatibility is a possibility, kind of.
Right.
And then specialize and say basically, hey, here is a very nice, this is a very intuitive model of the, Cambe setup and all. And I can show you this is a special case of the sufficient condition I'm giving you. See why this thing is arising. So this is kind of aspirational in my head, but I'm not sure if it is feasible or anything.
Right. The word aspiration reminds me, I also have a related paper with the title aspiration. But no, I mean, the Abru and Gül result is actually more general than the specific bargaining game I laid out. It could have more general bargaining protocols as well. So it goes towards the aspiration you have. So it's, I present as an alternating offer bargaining game, but it's more general than that. And when I got muted or whatever, things were lost. I was also saying that Kirill jump in any time to add anything else or correct me if I'm making up things. Yeah, Kirill is nothing, so I'm happy. I must have said reasonable things.
Okay.
Good. So any other question from the audience?
There's a lot on the chat. I didn't see this.
I don't see the audience, but thank you all for being here and listening to our paper. And if you have any comments, feedback, you can send us later as well. In any case, thank you for your attention.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little question. I mean, it's really small, no, but I mean, I was, all along the talk struggling with the D, no, D is like strictly smaller than one, no.
Right.
I think I kind of understood what the role is, no. Basically, what you want is to have like a value of conceding even in the worst case scenario. No? Is that the idea?
So, I mean, if D is equal to, the cake size is 1, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
D cannot be bigger than 1. So why don't we, the only thing we are
Yeah.
ruling out is D being equal to 1. What goes wrong when
Exactly.
D is equal to 1? When D is equal to 1, if you, conceding at any time is the same thing. There's no cost of delay, right?
Exactly.
So I just get 0 today versus 0 500 periods
But
from now. So that disappears. So
I see, but couldn't, I mean, it's a very tiny comment, but couldn't you just get exactly the same effect by having, sorry?
Froze again.
Yes, Julia, I think we have lost you, or the internet has become again unstable.
This, yeah,
Oops. Oh,
Okay, we lost
I
Hulya.
think we have lost.
It's a total
Julia.
failure.
Yes. So it's good that Kirill is still around, so we can continue the conversation with him. This is recorded, so you can always send it to Julia.
Yeah, no, I think she was doing great. But connectivity. So yeah, so I think we can do, we can prove the same results essentially by allowing d equals to 1. The problem is that case we need to treat very carefully because the equilibrium, so we rely a lot on this unique equilibrium in the subgame when we go into concession stage. If we allow for d equals to 1, there's going to be other equilibria, and we need to be very carefully placing bounds on the payoffs that you could get in across these equilibria. So it's just going to lengthen the paper really without, well, I don't know, that's subjective, right? But in our view, without adding too much
No, but
generality,
my
I would
point,
say.
no, I mean, yes, I mean, I get that. Okay, that was my suspicion, that was the reason for having D strictly less than 1. Okay, but what I was wondering, because, in terms of notation, at least for, there are so many moving parts, okay, in the paper, that to carry in our memory, D seems like perhaps if you can get away with it with a simpler assumption would be beneficial for the communication of the paper. And what I was thinking is that why not to allow for an epsilon, which is simply the value of just reaching an agreement, is independent of what we are bargaining for. I think it's exactly the same mathematically, okay? But you can't forget about the epsilon. This is just making the equilibrium unique.
Yes, I see. So you get epsilon from an agreement plus whatever share, and if it's 0, you still get epsilon.
I think it's mathematically equivalent to what you do, but then, D disappears from the slides.
Yeah. But yeah, I see. Yes, we will. Yes, thank you. Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. We will discuss, try, and see. Yeah.
Even simpler, just assume the unique equilibrium when D is equal to 1. That is the limit of.
In the existing literature also, I don't think there is that D in the reputational bargaining. So yeah, simpler assumption to kind of get rid of it might be easier. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Abru and Good assume that the individual demands are strictly smaller than 1.
Yeah.
Right. And in Kanbei, this is not an issue because in Kanbei, you actually never want to push your demand high. Okay. So he doesn't really need to deal with that case either. So we could assume that we just could look at the limit, I would say, as the suggestion from Max, I believe, came. So we basically do like an equilibrium selection. We say, look, like if the demand, one of the demands is equals to 1, or both demands equal to 1, then we just take the limit of the Abring-Gül's equilibrium. I believe we considered that before. I think there might be some issues, but I think we could look again. Yeah, given on this feedback that if people are uncomfortable with D's floating around, maybe this is something we should revisit. Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. I got disconnected, but you guys were in better hands, so.
It was good, not that the problems with the connection only started when you had already finished, your presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe unless, is there any other question? So maybe we can stop the recording and the broadcasting. So thank you all for coming. We're going to remain a few minutes just for informal talk. Okay, but thanks again for joining us another week. And remember that next week we'll be back again. In this case, it's going to be Maurice Meyer-Tervent, who's going to talk about simple contagion dynamics in tree-like networks. So thank you very much.
Thank you.